we've got an incubator that we built probably about 3 years ago. It's a foam board incubator made out of, it's basically just foam board insulation. And it's relatively inexpensive to build. You can build it for, I think in the video I say $60, but now I'm going to push that up closer to 75 or 80, just due to the rising cost of materials and whatnot. But still, for an incubator of that'll do the job that it does, it's well worth the money. I've been using one now since I built them. I've had 3 of them. I gave 2 of them away because I've got, several commercial models, but I have one that is running right now, and it's pretty much running around the clock, just as a hatching out all my eggs for me. That way the commercial incubators stay clean. Let me go ahead. We'll jump right in the presentation then. Basically, this is the DIY box incubator that we build here on the channel. It's made out of one 4x8 sheet of 1-inch foam board insulation material. That foam board insulation used to be about $19.95 a sheet, and I priced it just the other day, and it's like $26 a sheet now. So it's gone up in price. So it's going to cost you a little bit more than what we say in the video to build. But everything to build this project, everything you could pretty much find laying around. Obviously not the foam board, you have to buy that, but some of the wood trimming and stuff, that was just old pieces of wood that I had laying around. I think the only other thing that I had to buy was the Inkbird regulator, and you can see that there on the right. I bought that one, or all the other ones I had, they were like $15 a piece. I think now they're probably closer to 20. With the foam and the regulator, you've already got $45 wrapped up into it. And then you're going to need some light bulb pigtails, and I'll show you them here in a minute. And then some fans for inside the incubator. But you can see that there's one hatching tray in there now. I only had a few eggs to set for hatching, or for lockdown, so I thought I'd get a shot of it while I did. I don't know how well you can see that hygrometer, thermometer that's inside there, but you can see the bottom number, the smaller number, is the temperature inside the incubator, and it's holding steady at 99 degrees. It's actually closer to 99.5, and the relative humidity in there is at 40% now. That's that top number. And that's because there's no water in there. I do a dry hatch 90% of the time when I'm incubating. I do a dry hatch. It means I don't put any water in the incubator during incubation. The only time I'll add water to it is on day 14 when I go into lockdown, and I'll show you the trays here in a minute that I use, but I'll put a little bit of water in there, and that bumps it up to about 65%. This is a close-up of the Inkbird. It's the ITC 1000F, which just means it has Fahrenheit reading along with Celsius. You can see on the top there, if you're starting from right to left, I know it's upside down, it's tricky to read, but there's 8 pins along the back side of that Inkbird, which is where you hook your wires to. But the only ones that you're going to use is pins 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then 5 and 6. And 1 and 2 are basically your power. That's your positive and your neutral wire. Pins 3 and 4 are going to be your temperature sensor probe. And that comes with the Inkbird. And that sensor probe can be installed either way. There is no positive or negative on that. So you can't mess that up. You just stick one wire in 3 and the other wire in 4, and you're good to go. And then on pins 5 and 6, pin 5 is a hot pin. So what you need to do is run a jumper from pin 1 over to pin 5, and basically all you're doing is supplying power to that switch. Pins 5 and 6 are a switch. And then pin number 6 will go to your heating element or your light bulb, the hot leg of your light bulb. I also wanted to point out that you can see that this thing is reading 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Some people like to set the Inkbird I set mine at 99 degrees, and which basically means that it shuts off when it gets to 99 degrees. It turns off the heating elements inside the incubator. But the residual heat from the light bulbs or heating elements will bring it up to about 99.5. Now, some people will set the Inkbird at 100 degrees, and I guess it's worked well for them, but I'm thinking that they're in a cooler climate to where it needs to come on or stay on a little bit longer just to hold that heat up around between 99.5 and 100 degrees. Either one is fine. You're just going to play with it and see what zone works for you. But I've always kept mine at 99.5, and I've never had an issue with it. Always get pretty decent hatches. Okay, I just wanted to point out, there's 3 settings inside the Inkbird that need to be changed. And this is probably where I run into the biggest issues when people call me up. They have a problem with the incubator, like it's getting too cold, or it's when it gets to 99, it waits a few minutes before it turns on the heating elements. And that's because there's 3 settings that have to be changed inside the Inkbird. I'm not going to tell you how you get in there to change them, but I will tell you what the 3 temperatures are, the 3 settings are, and what values they need to be set in. You can see on this shot here, it's TS, which stands for temperature set. And this is actually the first setting that comes up when you go into the settings. And it needs to be set to 99 degrees. Like I say, or set in the last shot, some people do 100, but I do 99. The second setting is PT, which I have no idea what PT stands for, but that is your compressor delay. And the compressor delay, you want the value set to 0. By default, I think it's 3. What that means is your Inkbird will turn on the heating elements when it drops down to 98 degrees. And that's what this next setting is going to tell you. But when it drops down to 98 degrees, the Inkbird turns on the heating elements, and it goes up to 99. Once it reaches 99 degrees, it shuts off. And then as it cools back down, it gets to 99 or 98 again. But the compressor delay is the value or the setting that it will wait before it actually turns them bulbs on. So what'll happen is, say you're at 99 degrees and it starts sinking back down to 98. It gets to 98, and instead of your heating elements come on, if you leave the setting at default, it's going to wait 3 minutes before it turns it on. So now your temperature can actually drop down to about 96, 97 degrees, somewhere in there, before the heating elements come on. So if you change that compressor delay to 0, when it gets down to 98 degrees, it will come on right when it gets to that point. Okay, next setting is DS, which stands for differential set. And that is the amount of degrees that you want that thing to, you got to set it 99. You want to set it to this differential set to 1. That means it will drop 1 degree before turning the light back on. So this value, I think by default, to be honest with you, I'm not sure what the default setting is, but that needs to be set at 1. That covers those settings inside the Inkbird. And the settings are really simple, guys. Once you get in there, there's, like I said, there's only 3. You got your temperature, you got your compressor delay, which needs to be at 0, and your differential set, which needs to be at 1. Those 3 settings, your Inkbird's set up and ready to go. Okay, this shot here is just showing the trays that I use in the bottom of the incubator to add water to for when I go into lockdown. And those are just, believe it or not, silverware trays, individual silverware trays. I've never seen them before, but I picked them up at Dollar General or the dollar store. I think they were $1 a piece. And if I fill both of them, my humidity will come up to about between 60 and 65%, depending on what the relative humidity is outside the incubator. And the other shot on the right is just showing the temperature sensor probe. I always keep that even with the top of the top hatching tray or the top turner if you're going to use it as an incubator also. And the reason for that is obviously heat rises. So you want that sensor probe to be in an area where it's not, if you had it lower than this top shelf, it might get too hot. So keep it even with the top shelf. That way your eggs in the top row are not being cooked. This is just another shot of the hatching tray. I've got, I don't know, maybe a couple dozen eggs in there right now. I actually just sent those eggs today. They're due to hatch in about 3 days, or they went into lockdown. And the picture on the right is a close-up of the circulation fans and the heating elements, which are basically just 60 or 85 watt halogen bulbs. And in the video online, we say that you want to use incandescents, but good luck finding them anymore. So if you just go to Walmart or Home Depot, they both still carry halogens. you want a 60-watt equivalent or a 75-watt equivalent, whichever you can find. Either one will work just fine. I've also had luck with the ceramic heating elements like you would use for reptiles and whatnot. Those will also work. You can see the two heavy-duty light bulb receptacles that the light bulbs screw into. Those are another thing that you'll have to purchase. Those are like, I think I spent $4 a piece on them, something like that. And then two computer fans. Those are Arctic F8 computer fans. They are a low-speed fan that moves just about the right amount of air to keep good circulation. And I didn't get a shot of it, but behind those fans is a channel that's on the outside of the incubator, on the back side of the incubator. It's the forced air channel. And at the bottom of the incubator is where the cutout is. Let me go back to that shot. You can't see it in this picture, but right behind those two water trays, there's a little cutout on the back of the incubator. And there's on the back side of that is a forced air channel that goes up to these fans. And that's where it draws the air up. It draws the air from the bottom of the incubator up through the forced air channel and then blows it out across the heating elements, which in turn warms the air and keeps it going. Let's see. Okay, here's a shot of, this is where I just put the eggs in for lockdown. You can see it, the temperature's up to 99. At the very bottom, you can see it says 99, then 100. That was my low temperature and my 100 temperature. So you can see that it's averaging between 99 and 100 degrees. So it's pretty close to 99.5. And then my humidity, the low side right there was 36 degrees and the high was, I think it was 48. And that was with no water in there. Once I added water to it, that top number went up to about 64, 65. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about some modifications that I've been doing to that box. This has been over probably a 2-year period, just making different modifications to it to make the box run a little bit better. But one of the modifications, and if you look on the fan setup, let me go back to the fans. Right there, those are two Arctic F8 fans. Those are 12-volt fans. They're just basically your standard computer fan. I'm changing out my boxes to this fan. It's 120-volt axial 8038. It's a little bit thicker than the computer fans, but it's a dual bearing and it's sealed. And that fan is so quiet, you can barely hear it running. Actually, when it's inside the incubator, you can't hear it at all. Those fans are available. They're not, I think they're close to the same price as two of the axial fans, or two of the Arctic fans. But anyhow, that's what I'm changing out the incubator to, is two of them. Also, let me jump ahead. I'm also playing with this right now. This is a 120-volt heating element. I am trying to come up with an option for you guys, because I see online, and I've had people contact me saying, hey, I can't find the light bulbs, the incandescent light bulbs. And I thought, get the halogens. Some people say I can't find those either. So this is what I'm working with now. I'm still testing it. I want to see, they get pretty warm. So you definitely have to have a fan blowing through the ribs on this thing, or they'll actually get hot enough to melt that plastic. But before I release it to the public, I want to make sure that I can come up with a safe way of mounting it and a way that the fan is going to keep that heating element cool enough to where it doesn't cause any issues, especially inside a foam incubator. This is just a shot of a couple of my commercial incubators. The one on the left is made by, this is the axial fan that I just showed you in the presentation. Your incubator, if you're going to switch these, requires two of these fans. Or this fan, it's also an axial. It's almost twice the size, but one of these will move as much air as two of these. So I'm thinking of, on my next incubator build, I'm just going to use one of these fans, because I like the fact that these fans are 120 volt. I don't have to have a 12-volt transformer to run the fans like you do now. So everything will be 120 volts. These things are dead quiet. They're dual bearing and they're sealed. You don't have to worry about the down and stuff from your chicks. I know if you've hatched eggs, you've seen all that dusty, downy stuff in the incubator. With these fans, you won't have to worry about that. Those are going to be tested, and down the road, we'll do another video on that incubator and let you guys know how it works and what works. I did have thing here. This, just to give you an idea of how big it is, it's 120 volt. You wouldn't think that that thing would be 120 volt, but it is. And what I'm trying to do is come up with something to where this is the bigger fan. I can mount that directly in front of this fan to where this isn't touching anything other than the two metal mounts that are holding it in front of the fan. That way, there's no way that this thing could possibly heat up the foam on your incubator, start a fire or whatever. I don't think it'd start a fire. That I've actually trying to think what I used. I used something. Oh, I took a light bulb. Somebody had posted a picture. This was a couple years ago. Posted a picture how their light bulbs melted the inside of their heat chamber inside the incubator. And at first, when the guy first posted the picture, I called him out on it. And I said, I know how hot it gets in there. If your fans were working properly, there's no way that foam melted. And to prove my point, I actually took a piece of that foam, took a 100-watt incandescent bulb, and held it up against that foam for probably 5 minutes and took it off that foam. And there was barely a indentation on the foam. Yeah, it's not going to start a fire, Dennis. All right. Like I say, if you have any questions about the incubator or any of the settings that we use for that incubator, or any ideas that you might have that I haven't thought of as far as tweaking it, if you can keep it right at 100, that's almost 101, 100.5. I like it a little bit below 100 degrees, anywhere between 99.5 and say 97, 99.7. It's not dangerously high. Your eggs will incubate, they will hatch. The thing that I would like to ask you, what's your temperature gradient on the low side? What is it on the high side? Not your gradient, but your average temperature. Is it dropping down to 98 or 99? And is it going up over 100.4? Because that's what you need to average those temperatures. Around 100 degrees, your chicks might hatch half a day early or a day early, but I don't think it would be dangerously high. You might want to put your incubator on a surge protector, and better yet, a battery backup, like what you would use on a computer. That way, if you did have any issues, power going out or whatever, hopefully the battery backup would keep it going long enough to where the power can come back on. So, but yeah, I don't think you're going to have any issues in the first 3 days. After I first built the incubators, I was using them constantly. I was worried about not being able to find the bulbs, even the halogens. So I went out and I bought a whole box of those things. I don't mean a box of 4 bulbs, a whole box, basically a case of bulbs. When they're ready to go into lockdown, I'll pull the eggs out of that incubator and I'll put them in the DIY incubator, hatch everything out. And then I've only got one box that needs to be cleaned. And that box, I take it outside, I open the door and I just blast it out with a garden hose, spray it down with disinfectant, let it soak a little bit, spray it down one more time, and let it sun dry. And it's good to go.